Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Own the AI Conversation, a technology roadmap through the recruiting continuum, presented by People Science and HireGate. My name is Jessica Oberto, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at People Science. We're happy that you all joined us today. You'll find that these webinars are more conversational between our panels. So if at any point you'd like to ask something or have a question or want to mention something that you have feedback on, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get back to you. We will be sharing a deck today as we walk you through the recruiting continuum. And please know that we'll send this out to you after today's webinar. So if you want to take some notes, do that, but you will have a copy of it after. So let's get on to our panel. First, we have People Science and HireGate CEO and founder, Christine Nicholas. Christine has spent 30 plus years reimagining how organizations attract top talent, building People Science and HireGate to deliver smarter, data-driven hiring. Christine's a recognized thought leader in the TA industry and is also the creator of the Recruiting Continuum methodology, which we'll be talking about today. And we also have Lindsay Roundtree. Lindsay is our Chief Talent and Product Officer at People Science and HireGate. She leads the recruiting teams, integrates the latest AI and HR tech into the recruitment process, and rolls out the metrics and market insights that drive measurable business results for our clients here at People Science. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Christine.
Thank you. And good morning to the West Coast. Hello there. I guess you're having lunch right now on the East Coast. It's good to be back on air. I know we've been away for a while. I will tell you that I've been heads down, deeply immersed in meeting with and attending a lot of conferences relevant to AI and the future of TA and where it's going. We have a lot of data today. So I'm going to try and move through this as quickly as I can. Again, Jess has told you that she's going to send you the deck. You know, if you've been following us and you've watched any of our webinars, you know that I like to keep it as short and sweet and give you a lot of good data in short order. So I tried to reduce some of these slides considerably. And just we're having trouble seeing the slideshow. There we go. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about what we're seeing as far as the labor statistics, the most recent labor statistics. I'll also do what we have been doing since 2020, talking about return to work, talking about diversity, and talking about AI in the workforce. So we'll touch on all of those. So meaty right now. So excited to have you here and explain some of this data. Finally, back to what are we doing with jobs and what does our reporting look like? You know, one of the reasons I put a pause on the last couple of months is the Bureau of Labor Statistics itself has been trying to kind of catch its breath and say, where are we? So some of this data, I think, was kind of wishy-washy. But here we are looking at March 25 to March 26. These are jobs added. This is as of the most recent JOLTS report, again, reflecting back to March. We're already in May, but we know that we run somewhat behind, and March is still considered somewhat preliminary. I don't see anything scary here, but what I wanted to do is take a look back. So Jess, can we go to the next slide? And look at what does it look like since 2023? So if we're saying coming out of COVID, we hit that big push in 2022, which is starting to dwindle out in 23. Can we get kind of a clock of where added jobs has been moving? So I think looking at this from 2023, 2024, 25, and 26. So if we look comparatively, we are seeing a bit of a slowdown in jobs added, but at the same time, if you look at 25 compared to 26, right now it's mimicking almost exactly the same. Those of you who have questions about this reporting, and I think there's a lot of questions going on about the reporting, here's what I'll tell you. Having taken a deep dive and actually been in Europe for the last couple of weeks myself and taking a look at how the world is collecting data, the US BLS is still the head of the game here. So I think understanding these numbers is important as we take a look at the overall employment initiatives. Okay. What's going on with unemployment? Look at October. It's still not available. I don't think it's ever going to be available. But here we are. Again, we hear these numbers, and I think there's a lot of drama going on. But if we looked historically, these are not giant moves. So we're not seeing things like the Great Recession. We're not seeing things like, backwards markets. That's just not happening. That doesn't mean and this kind of reminds me, all these statistics look really good, but it reminds me of that duck that you say things look really common underneath they're paddling like crazy. That's what's happening in the world of work, right? And if you're in TA, maybe you're saying lots of recs, then you're saying no recs. And then you're saying, we can't give you a head count, because this is what we're hearing and saying from our clients that we're partnered with too. So even though it looks pretty consistent, that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of chaos being caused by new things that are happening in the world of work. So with that, let's move on to diversity is next, right, Jess?
Yes.
So I want to explain again, I don't like a lot of data, but I couldn't cut it any lower. So the next 3 slides have a lot of data. I've also removed from them the source, but there are sources that have been validated for each one of these bullets. So when Jess sends you the deck, or Jess's team sends you this deck, you'll have a note on there that will tell you what the source is. I'd like to also make a really clear point. These next few slides are specific, and I was looking for data that's come out over the last 5 days. So it may not have originated in the last 5 days, but it's been highly promoted for the last 5 days. That's the world we're living in right now. So I really did not expect to see a lot in diversity and inclusion. And maybe that's because we're somewhat pigeonholed sometimes and haven't been hearing a lot from our own client base about it. But here's really what is being Sharma's reporting, and some of the other high-rated HR organizations are reporting. The federal DEI rollback is accelerating. There's a due date on May 25th for this. This is the new program introduced by the Trump administration, which is really set to replace all the other DEI programs that have been out there. The deadline for compliance on that is the 25th. EEO is investigating corporate DEI. So Nike's under federal scrutiny for allegedly discriminating against white workers. Private sector is on notice. Would you ever think that you'd hear something like that maybe 10 years ago? Absolutely not, right? Compliance is now DEI's number one priority. HR and legal have to keep aligning, document business justifications for every single diversity initiative. Very different than where we were just a few years ago. Companies are going quiet. So they're saying they're not stopping, but they're stripping the labels, trying to embed equity as compared to DEI, and really looking into hiring leadership and culture and how that's a fit, and getting them on board with new terminologies. AI bias audits are going mainstream. The algorithm fairness reviews now are standard practice. Unchecked AI can reverse all your discrimination gains. So as Lindsay and Jess really take a deep dive into AI and the effects that it's having on how we're recruiting, this is a big piece. On that, I'm going to jump down to what we're seeing before I get to some of these other stats. In the UE, there's a lot more regulation that's going on, and that's, of course, going to be passed on to the US. Millennials now represent 75% of the workforce. Give you a second on that. 75% of the workforce. And diversity remains one of the top 3 for them when they consider an organization. How open-minded and how diverse is that organization, and how does it move towards diversity? 76% of job seekers factor DEI into their job choices. I think that's a very interesting number. But I think they're using that as a guidepost to say, what is this organization that I'm considering joining look like? DEI teams cut out of AI decisions. Only 35% of chief DEI officers involved in the AI workforce discussions. So that's a big gap. So as DEI leadership is being negated, removed, relabeled, and expected to make changes, they're really not in these decisions anymore as far as the effects of AI. Inclusion built into systems, not just programs. So shifting from DEI initiatives to embedded equity and everyday workflows and processes, which is very, very different than the way we had it before. It'll be interesting to see the effects of this new methodology and how it changes the way we look at diversity in the workforce. So the business case is still strong. The top quartile business diversity companies, 25% more profitable. Inclusive organizations generate 2.3 more cash flow per employee than others. That is still a big number. We really need to, and I'm going to make a note now, to look at this in a year and see how these new policies are changing or accelerating or depreciating the diversity in our workforce. It's a lot to absorb. Go ahead, Jess. Return to work. Again, a big surprise for me. I did not expect to see, and by the way, I used a considerable amount of AI to gather this data, but again, went through and really looked at the sources, read each article to see where they are. So when we send this out, I encourage you, if you see something here, a bullet point that's very important to you and your organization, take a deeper dive. It is out there. So 5-day mandates are spreading fast. Amazon, JP Morgan, Goldman, Tesla, Fidelity, Home Depot, Instagram, and dozens more requiring full 5 days in office. There's some new names up there. I mean, we knew Goldman, we knew the financial New York centers were pushing more for an office years ago, but to hear something like, Fidelity, Home Depot, Instagram are pushing for that 5-day in office, that's a very interesting case study at this point. Fortune 100s have surged in their return to work mandates. 54% of the Fortune 100 employees are now under a 5-day mandate, up 11% from a year ago. But look at this, the policy is outplacing people. In-office requirements are up 12%, but actual attendance is only up 1 to 3%. I can tell you, I've had personal experience with this, visiting organizations that have these policies in place, but it kind of goes quiet, right? So it's, we had quiet quitting. It's like quiet RTO. So even though I have to be here 5 days, if I only come in one, no one's really noticing and no one's policing that. It'll be interesting, again, to look at this maybe 6 months out and to see how well that's being policed, because I don't see a big focus on it right now. Employees are saying they're ready to walk. 92% are saying that they leave their job for a remote opportunity. I think that is an incredibly big number. I'm surprised. I double checked it. And, considering some of the sources that went into this, though, you can see a lot of validity there. I would definitely take a look and poll your own internal people and see what the effects would be if you made changes there, or if you're considering making changes. Senior leaders left Amazon and Dell for competitors that were offering flexibility mandates rather than a full-on RTO. So we can see that leadership is also saying, tell me why this makes sense. And if it doesn't, why I'm not going to do it. I don't think this is just a personal decision. I think it is, this lap between business, like how much more efficient will we really be? And how much more efficient are we really at home? And when you dig into some of the reasonings of the leaders that are saying, I want to keep a hybrid or go to RTO, their explanation is they really do see productivity higher in an RTO model as compared to some of them, even a hybrid model. Big corps, though, have a big influence on everybody. So 54% of all businesses say that major RTO moves have influenced their policies. I think a lot of smaller organizations are saying, why am I doing this or not doing this? I also think it's going to be interesting to look at, and I think we'll take a poll in our customers and prospective customers that are in the startup world. And if you're in the startup world, I'd like to see how that plays out 2 and 3 years later, because I think startups in particular are more vulnerable to remote work, because that collective can be so important in the beginning, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And of course, if you're a new CEO and this is the first time that you're helming an organization and you've always been remote, looking at the Fortune 100s to say how that's going to change, I think is really important. Federal government is leading this push with 2.4 million employees being told that they are going to have to return to office, the same that we're told that they could do a hybrid. Hybrid still dominates. 67% of companies still offer flexibility. 22.6% of U.S. workers are still remote or hybrid as of March 26. Still a pretty big number. Retention risk is real. 64% of remote workers would quit if flexibility ended. So when we were talking about 92% say that they would leave for a fully remote job, when we come down and look at the retention rate, 64% said, if you're going to mandate me in all the time, I'm not going to do it. And I think, too, you need to look at this pendulum swinging both ways. Your internal staff may take a lower salary or stay in place longer because of the liberties that they have to work from home. And once there's really clear statistics that once you've changed your lifestyle, very difficult to go back, right? So companies allowing remote work see a 76% better retention rate. And then finally, on the RTO topic, it's creating internal conflicts. 75% of HR leaders say RTO mandates have caused tension within their organizations. RTO is a big deal. So let me give you a snapshot before we lead into how AI has, and the studies that we've done about how it's affecting recruiting as a whole. But AI at work, yesterday, Google, it was all over the place that Google's now announced that engineers are going to be able to use Gemini in the interview process. Jess and I were saying, that's like saying, okay, you can do your SATs with a calculator now. But it is a big, everybody tends to follow the FANGs and large organizations. So it'll be interesting to see how this trickles down. But global AI adoption is rising fast. 17.8% of workers working age population are now using AI. The UAE leads at 70%. US is ranked 21. That's slow, right? At 31.3, but we're seeing a big increase coming. AI skills equal bigger paychecks. This came directly from SHRM. Workers with AI skills are earning 56% more than peers without. There's another bullet on here that also talks about companies are in fact upskilling their own employees and not expecting to hire on the outside with AI expertise, because how many people really have AI expertise? I'd be a little bit skeptic of people coming in saying I'm an AI expert at this point. Middle management is shrinking. Or, I'm sorry, HR all in on AI. 92% of CHROs expect deeper AI integration in 2026. Middle management is shrinking. 20% of orgs using AI to flatten their structure, cutting 50% of mid-management roles. Yeah, 50% of mid-management roles. Agentic AI rise. AI now executing complex workflows autonomously. I think this is a really, really good point. And 65% of CIOs are managing AI agents. So your attendance today, I think, has a lot to do with, and I'm seeing struggles, and I know we're pretty opinionated right now. Do we really want to see the CIO of the company running all of operations at this point because of agentic tools that are out there? AI levels the hiring and playing field. Older workers and non-degree candidates with AI skills are seeing dramatically higher callback rates. Pretty interesting. AIs now reskill and don't replace. And there's that bullet that I was looking for. 63% of companies are retraining employees versus hiring AI specialists externally. AI shifts jobs, it doesn't kill them. One more time, AI is shifting jobs, it's not killing them. 5.7% more likely to change a role than to eliminate it. Those changes, however, are significant, right? There's still a big change coming. The embrace has to be there. There's no stopping this engine. Let's make that clear. None. And it's moving really quickly. But it's good to see that we're changing roles instead of eliminating them. Regulation is here. The Europe acted the flags recruiting and performance evaluation is high risk. We're always high risk, right? Every time it's a compliance issue, it's people, it's going to be high risk. Compliance is now being required. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out here in the US. Human and AI wins. Companies that are blending human and AI talent see a 2.5 higher revenue growth. There's like 4 sources that are validating this. I don't know how anybody knows that right now. I'm taking a deeper dive. So I'm reporting what I'm hearing. I'm digging into them. Their statistics make sense, but I still remain skeptic. So what we're saying is AI is having a tremendous effect. Again, this is the most recent. We will be reviewing this again next month when we talk about where Miss or Morph is our program for next month. It's really going to talk about how TA can leverage AI outside of recruiting for the future of work and where it's going. But today I'm very excited to turn this over to Lindsay and Jess and walk us through where we are. So thank you, ladies.
Great. Thank you, Christine, for all the updates and stats. A lot to think about as things are changing so quickly. So today we are going to talk about AI and take you through where AI fits and works throughout the recruiting continuum. And today, I'm sure everyone knows that every TA leader is getting asked the same questions, right? So where does AI fit best in your process? Where will it not work? How do you measure the return on the tools that you're already paying for and have in place? Can our TA process scale without just adding more people? What's our risk if we get this wrong? So if we implement something, what's the risk of it not working well? Really, to be honest, most of us don't have clean answers on this yet, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's first kind of back up and talk about some of the real risk of AI in recruiting. It doesn't create new problems. If you implement AI the wrong way, it's only going to accelerate the ones that were already there. So first, starting with bias amplification. So AI that's trained on historical data will typically take and inherit and scale what's there. So if there's a bias issue in your process today, AI is just going to make that worse for you. Compliance exposure, which Christine just mentioned, a lot of the states are putting in regulations into how you can use AI in hiring. Breaking those rules can get you in a lot of legal and financial trouble. If you have bad data in, you're going to get bad decisions coming out. So making sure that your data in the applicant tracking system, CRMs, is clean, consistent. If you don't do that before implementing AI, you'll be getting a bigger scale problem. And then over automation. So if you are using AI to automate at the wrong piece in your process and removing the human touch where it matters the most, you are more than likely going to encounter bad candidate experience and damage to your brand name, which we don't want. And wasted investment. So if you're buying the tools without the process in place where it needs to be, you're going to find that you'll have lower adoption rates, poor ROI, and tools that no one's using in your organization. And then most importantly, candidate trust. Candidates are becoming more and more aware of where AI is being used in the recruitment cycle. So lack of transparency can really deter trust in your talent pool and prevent people from applying. So the goal overall is not to avoid AI, of course. We all want to put it where it works best for your organization. But the main point is to make sure that you're implementing it in the right order for the right reasons. So looking at your process before technology. Going through, and we'll show you this by the recruiting continuum, but looking at your entire recruiting cycle and documenting and stabilizing your process before you throw AI into it. Making sure that automation is only going to amplify what's happening there in the right way. Knowing your AI readiness score. And we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but really understanding where your process, the data that you have today, how your team's going to react and use these tools, and where your tech stand is before you make any big decisions in buying and implementing AI tools. And our number one tip is really start narrow, not wide. So being able to look at your recruiting process in each stage of the cycle and pick one or two pieces where you think AI is going to add clear value. And then being able to prove the value, measure it consistently. And then once you feel like you have it down and your implementation went well, expand that into another stage of the recruiting process. Audit for bias before launch. So being able to test AI outputs against diverse candidate pools before going live. Build in ongoing monitoring to make sure that you're always avoiding any bias that might be coming up from these AI tools. Again, like I mentioned, AI learns from the data or the process that you have in place. So if you're not sure that you are monitoring for those things, it's only going to amplify it. And know your compliance obligations. So make sure that you have someone on staff that's looking at AI regulations on an occurring basis in every state and jurisdiction where you recruit in. That's important to remember. This isn't something that you can just forget to do. It's mandatory that you do this to avoid any legal and financial risk for your organization. And keeping humans in critical decisions. So AI should really be used at this point to inform and assist, not replace human judgment at offer, assessment, or final selection stages. Lynn, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Jess. So before we dive into the continuum, and some of our followers have done the continuum webinars with us previously, today we're really going to focus on the different pieces of AI and how they play into the parts of the continuum, which we're going to look at in a second. But I think it's really important to look at the three categories, the three ways we're categorizing AI to understand how they play a role into these different pieces of the continuum. So the first layer is really that data layer. It's the collection and the organization of things. This is where resume parsing is happening, market compensation data is being collected and organized, those sourcing analytics and that candidate history. That's the piece that's sitting at the front where we're seeing most organizations have a comfort level with adding AI into those pieces. The second layer is that decision layer where we're analyzing data and making recommendations using AI. So candidate sourcing activity, interview recommendations, offer optimization, and then flagging out risk. That's happening in that decision layer of AI. And then the third layer is your action layer, where execution and automation are happening. So automating your outreach to your candidates, utilizing source tools that are automatically doing outreach, interview scheduling. We're seeing a lot of that happening in our ATSs right now. Offer generation. Believe it or not, there are some organizations that are using AI to quickly generate offers. And then onboarding workflows, understanding more of what's happening through the onboarding process and the success of the onboarding process from a candidate perspective. We're seeing a lot of AI implementation happening in layers 1 and 2. So that data layer and that decision level is where we're seeing the most comfort for us when it comes to implementing AI. But we are very, very quickly seeing the action layer come into play. Those bots and those pieces that are really being taken over by some of AI and talent acquisition. So it's quickly catching up, that third layer. AI, it's crazy how quickly things are changing, right? And we keep saying this. We keep saying AI changes so quickly. And I agree. It changes as quickly as we can change our socks some days. But our AI vendors are running to us to sell us as many items and as many tools as possible. But really understanding the layers where they should be implemented and the importance of them to you is a good first step before you take any action on making a purchase or implementing something new, which is why I wanted to stress the 3 data layers as we jump into the continuum. Some of you have seen this before, but let's talk about it. So the recruiting continuum maps out every stage of the talent acquisition cycle for us. It serves as a guide for us to assess, design, and optimize our hiring. So really laying recruiting flat and looking at the different pieces, our define, our source, our gather, and we're going to do a deep dive into what current state looks like and then how AI can play in to help with some of these phases. So jumping into our first phase of the continuum, that's our define phase, or our define part of the continuum. So determining the need and the why behind your need. So things like, what does your EVP look like? What do your job descriptions look like? How are you advertising? Those types of things really are encompassed in the define category. When we look at the gaps that live there currently, there are things like poorly defined roles, stakeholders who are not aligned. We all see this sometimes, those older, outdated job descriptions that are just kind of copy and pasted over. A big one is cost of vacancy. We talk about cost of vacancy a lot and our ability to understand cost of vacancy. And we'll find, as we move into some of these other categories, AI is really helping us close that gap there. So the state of AI now currently in our defined category is, predicting some of that recruiting cost, compensation data, market data. It's more readily available to us and we can implement that into our applicant tracking systems when we're opening a new position, forecasting and recruiting timelines based on historical data. This is a big one for all of us. Understanding how long it's going to take to fill a position is a big one. We know we can level set those expectations from the beginning. Generating accurate job descriptions. There are a lot of tools out there that are going to take the information we have and spit out a more defined job description for us. And then creating those interview guides for us as well. So this is what we're seeing AI do, for us at the moment. And some of the pieces our AI agents are stepping in and starting to do for us as well. Automating the job description based on role outcomes, which is different than the job description. Stakeholder alignment and workflows, things that used to take us very long time to come up with, maybe days, hours, are now very easily automated for us. And predict time to fill before a rec opens. That's a big one because we can take our historic data to determine that and utilize the AI to help us come up with those figures. Looking at attracting. So attracting the right candidates. The objective here is to make sure that we are advertising correctly, that we are measuring what we're doing, we're tracking our results, and we're really monitoring what's happening. The gaps we see today is that post and pray, right? Let's post it to every job board. Let's aggregate it everywhere and hope we get the right candidates, which a lot of the time can result a lot of applicants, but not necessarily the right applicants for us. Tracking our ad performance is not something that we have always had the capabilities of doing, or even a lot of us today still struggle to get that information. We're doing so much advertising, what's really working. Budgeting wasted on low return channels. If you knew that you could always post, let's say, an RN job on the same job board and get a heavy result, why would you post anywhere else? It would be a lot easier for you to go get your budgeting for that one tool in particular, those types of things. So those are the gaps that we're really seeing in how we're attracting our talent. What AI is doing for us now, it's predicting and giving us analytics on the best channels we should be using. What's that ROI look like for us? Really looking at our automating job descriptions, job ads, targeting sites for us, really knowing where we should go from the very beginning. CRM engagement to top funnel candidates. I'm going to stress top funnel candidates with grading capabilities and tools that are helping you understand who are your best matches. You can utilize your CRMs to engage those candidates faster. Tailoring automated messaging, another big one. If you have a big sourcing engine, odds are they're reaching out to lots of folks at the same time with very similar messaging. Nowadays, the AI can tailor directly to a candidate profile before outreach takes place. It feels more personal. You're getting a faster return. You are attracting the right people when you're sending the right messaging. And then real-time tracking of engagement results. It doesn't matter how many people you engage if you're not getting the responses that you need. Sourcing activity is not always tracked as closely as we would like it to be. At People Science, we're really lucky we have HireGate to very closely track our sourcing engagement. But our ATSs aren't doing that for us. But now we can engage AI to really help us see what the outcomes of that is for us. And then what our agents are doing, autonomously testing and optimizing ads all the time, really looking at your ads, making sure they're working, optimizing them for you. That's a big one. Auto adjusting your spend based on real-time results. What works today may not work tomorrow, right? As AI changes for us so quickly, so do the tools that we're using. And the tool that worked yesterday may not work in a month from now because the AI and the tools themselves are changing too. So you're getting different response levels. So knowing that and being able to pivot and utilizing the AI to help you do so is going to be really important. And then personalizing your job ads by candidate profiles. I think everybody here in the last week has at least gotten one text message that was so generic about a random open job they were not interested in. And so if you're utilizing AI properly, that should no longer happen to you. That should no longer happen to your pipeline. I've never been a maid. I'm never going to be a maid, but I get 4 text messages a week to go work at a hotel to clean hotels. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but I don't have that skill. I'm a terrible cleaner. Ask my family. So no one will want me to come in and clean their hotels. So as we continue to implement AI and those types of things, we will see those become more personalized, less general, and maybe more on target to someone's skill set. That would be my hope. As our AI agents continue to grow and continue to learn from us, those things should feel more personalized and targeted.
Yeah. And I've really liked the real-time factor in there, Lindsay. So having the AI agents do it in real time instead of having to come in the morning and see how things are going. I think that's a real game changer.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to add something too about, you were talking about engagement. If you're not, and you put a question in the chat asking if you're using AI in your recruiting cycle now, because I want to kind of get a gauge on that. Probably should have done a poll. I just don't know how to do that. Maybe Jess can do it. But I'll give you a good example. I got a call from a CHRO who was with a new startup, and she was looking to hire a CFO. She had a short list of 12 people. They had to be in a certain geography, and she wasn't getting anywhere. And there was only 12 people for this position, really. And we use a tool here that tells us how to engage a particular candidate that we don't know based on their LinkedIn profile. So it uses the DISC personality profile to come back and tell us, this is the way I would target this person. So I ran that for her, and 2 weeks later, she had an offer and a hire that started in less than a month. All because, so, internally we use this tool too. So if you're in a position where you're trying to hire a specific talent set and you're not using, and these are very reasonably priced, some type of a screening tool to tell you more about this person. And again, it's only based on a LinkedIn profile, which could be, usually isn't too far off, right? But hey, look at the difference. I know our sales teams use it too. Anyway, sorry, Lynn, jumped in.
No, it's okay, Christine. We actually are going to reference that in a few more slides in. So we're completely in sync there. Um, Looking at the sourcing piece of the continuum. So the objective of sourcing, we all know, is to identify and reach out to all possible talent. So really executing your sourcing plans, reaching out to those folks that are applying, along with your referrals, your internals who are well qualified, and your source pipeline. So really looking at what does my full talent pool look like when I'm sourcing, and then tracking your sourcing activity and the results of that sourcing. This is a bottleneck for a lot of us, right? There's a lot of activity that happens, but being able to measure it is not always as easy as we would like it to be. Our ATSs in the gap side can be a black hole for us. We disposition, everyone who's not qualified, interview the top few that are, but then what happens to those that were dispositioned? They go into that black hole. Sourcing limited to places like LinkedIn, or, just a few tools your team is provided with, which may not always cover the gap of the positions you're working on. Internal and referral channels are underutilized. We see this happen a lot. Some of you are probably seeing really great referrals happen, or a lot of referrals happen in that moment for one specific position, but are they being utilized later on down the line? And then very limited, if any, visibility into your sourcing ROI. This is a big one, especially when you have sourcers, justifying keeping them on your team, understanding, what are the outcomes? Do we have them assigned to the right roles? So how we're seeing AI help fill in some of these gaps right now is targeting and prompting the right candidates to apply. Almost every source tool will now automatically recommend the top 5 people for you to reach out to. Market jobs to your desired talent pool. So not just the folks that are out there actively searching, but the ones that are desirable to you and find your organization desirable, hitting those notes that stick with them. We're seeing the AI be able to identify that and make sure it's incorporated in the messaging that's happening. Knowing what your activity is in real time, that's a big one. What were the results of my sourcing today? I feel like I spoke to 100 people, but in reality, I maybe spoke to 30, right? So understanding what's realistic and really happening in the moment, as opposed to the feeling that comes along with the activity. And then understanding, the best sourcing channels to utilize and making sure that they're being matched with your recruiter strengths. Another tough one there, but AI is helping close that gap for us. On the AI agent side, we're seeing ATS matches happen more often. So you can actually layer an AI agent right on top of your ATS that will come in, analyze your pipelines, dig through old closed requisitions, and identify your top 10. Not only from what's been happening from your open job and who applied, but from historic positions that have been opened 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 12 months ago, and what candidates in those pipelines meet your needs, so that you can utilize not just the talent who's attracted today, but your talent that's been attracted previously. Running multi-channel sourcing campaigns. AI can come in and say these are the best places to really make sure you are advertising, you're going to see the best return there. And then score your passive candidates, knowing those candidates that have yet to respond, how strong are they going to be in your pipeline when they are there? Are they worth really actively pursuing, turning your AI agent on and saying, actively pursue this person, we cannot live without them. Moving along to our engage phase. So enticing our candidates to connect. The average number of outreaches that it takes to get to a cold candidate varies yearly. Right now, it's 3 to 5 outreaches to get a cold candidate to respond. I think that we will see that reduce as we continue to target who we're engaging and continue to utilize AI to customize those messages. So identifying what matters to the candidate is something that we're utilizing AI to help us with. Matching and communicating interests, building relationships before they actually apply to positions. Those are pieces of what we're doing in the engagement section, really courting those folks to get them into the process. Some gaps we're seeing there, really generic outreach. I'm one sourcer, I'm sourcing on 25 positions, I have to source 30 people a day. They're getting blanket outreach, not personalized, customized outreach. Following up is slow to happen. If I have numbers I have to hit every day, I'm not getting back to those folks as quickly as I should, which makes them losing that engagement level you want them to have. That 24/7 communication, people are getting used to that. And when we look at the other pieces of the AI, we'll talk about that. Candidates' experience is inconsistent across recruiters. Listen, we can standardize the interview process. We can standardize your messaging. We can do all of those things, but we can't control what our recruiters and sourcers are doing, which commonly creates this inconsistency there. So what are some of our AI agents do, or what is AI doing now to help fill the gap? Automating that personalized outreach, whether it's via email or text message. And your AI should even be able to tell you what's most desirable to that candidate. Is it that email? Is it that text message? Never going to email an RN. They're working 3 back-to-back 12s. They're never going to respond to me. I'm going to send them a text message though. I'm never going to text message a CEO that I'm trying to recruit for a new organization. They would probably be offended and would more than likely appreciate an email as opposed to a text message, right? So your AI is going to help you identify those pieces. That video engagement with your consistent employer branding. So if some of you are unfamiliar with this, it's essentially you're building out your interview guide and your candidates are sitting there answering those questions via video. And those are then submitted to your recruiters or your hiring managers, depending on where they fall in your interview process. And they're able to see that engagement without having to engage back. It helps them make a decision if they'd like to do so even further. Chatbots, 24/7 communication to your candidates. That is something I think we can all consider a big win for us. Look at the timestamps on when some of your people apply. 3:00 in the morning, 4:00 in the morning, 6 a.m. on a Saturday. Everyone has different downtimes and they don't always match the activity of your recruiters. Having a chatbot in place helps close that gap for you pretty quickly. Text to apply, some very basic, easy screening. A common complaint you'll hear from your applicants is it takes too long to complete an application. I went into Workday, I went into Icems, I went into Greenhouse, and I completed 30 applications in the last day. It was my entire day. Giving somebody a really quick and easy way to apply where you're gathering that basic knowledge, that basic information to determine if you want to continue to engage, that's a big one for your candidates. Give them the experience they deserve. What we're seeing our AI agents do to also help close this gap is those drip campaigns to scale. Letting your chatbots handle those basic Q&As. Do I have to be 18 years old for this job? Do I need a valid driver's license for this job? Do I have to have 5 years of experience for this job? That's something that you could very quickly DQ someone at the recruiter level, but why not have your chatbot do that? And those automation follow-ups to keep your candidates warm. You know, there are times positions go live and there are 30 openings, and now we have to keep 200 people warm because we know another 30 openings are coming. As a recruiter, that's a blanket. Hey, we're still interested in you. We'll be back to you soon. With an AI agent, it's, hi, Lindsay, how are you doing today? That position is coming in the next 3 weeks, just touching base. A lot more personal than the blanket emails. So looking at the assess portion of the continuum. So first, a determination of a qualified candidate, targeting the right fits from all places, really doing a deep dive into the resumes. initiating your screenings across your applicant tracking system, your referrals, your internals, and your source. Again, looking at your full pipeline. So some of the gaps that we're seeing, the data is fragmented across multiple sources. AI can help you really close that gap. Manual screening creates delays. It takes a while to read, through 400 applicants and make your best decision on who you're going to interview next. Inconsistency from recruiter to recruiter in your screening criteria. We kind of covered this one already, right? You can standardize, but people still deviate. And then bias introduced in early filtering. We recently implemented our own recruiter bot, Joy, and we love her. And I find that when we receive the screening guides that come from her, it's not necessarily the bias that takes place, but sometimes she presents candidates that their resumes just did not cover all of the things I was looking for in my job description. But because she still had the conversation, I'm now looking at a candidate that one of my recruiters maybe would have disqualified because their resume didn't present well, but they themselves presented really well. So where that's not necessarily a bias piece, it's also helping us filter in people we would traditionally filter out based on their resume. So what we're doing with our AI now to help close those gaps, parse and rank top candidates. Most of us are using a tool, whether it's a source tool or a tool integrated into our ATS that is ranking your top candidates. If you are not doing this and you receive the type of incoming that our clients receive, 400 or 500 folks a day, then you're drowning in applicants. Being able to prioritize the top 10 really helps you move the needle faster. Stripping non-relevant identifiers from a resume. Remember how I just said that there were identifiers that weren't always there? Well, that goes two ways, right? There may be some that are there that could change a recruiter's opinion and create a bias we don't want to happen, where AI can strip that and make it a more neutral situation for all of us. Disqualification of non-fitting candidates. I think that's pretty simple, right? Turn on your pre-qualifiers. If you don't need it, that candidate should never hit your pipeline because they genuinely are not a fit for you. And it's wasting your time even looking at their application at times, at least for that role. Consistent first screen. Remember, we talked about how recruiters can deviate sometimes. Your AI is never going to deviate unless you ask it to. So you're providing a very consistent experience at scale for your candidates. And then your AI agents are coming in, they're parsing and ranking those candidates across all channels. So it's not just showing me my top 10 in my ATS. It's showing me the top 20 out of my applicant tracking system, my previous open positions, my 4 source tools that are integrated into my ATS, and the folks that we've pulled in from other places, those referrals and internals. So it's ranking everyone for us and allowing us to really utilize the full pipeline in one place. Collect only what's needed and reduce the noise. Collect only what's needed. That's a dream. Apply blind screening to reduce bias at scale. Again, we set the parameters with our AI agents. We tell them what we want to know. You can break down your recruiter phone screens and hand them off to these agents and ensure that they're gathering what you want them to do. And they do it without any bias and at a high rate. And then moving on to our last piece of the continuum is that onboarding side of things. So thank you, Jess, sorry. Introduce the new hire to the organization. So really validating the expectation, regular check-ins with your new hires, 30, 60-day, 90-day touch points, asking for referrals. It's actually a great time when someone is in the onboarding process that's made it all the way through your process to ask for that referral. So really that's the objective of what we're looking to achieve in the onboarding process. Some of the gaps that we're finding there is drop off between offer and start. This is very common in the high volume sector. We offered 35 people. We expect 35 people to start on day 1, 29 show up. Slow ramp up time with no structure. Not having a very structured process in place to get your new hires ramped up really quickly. Measuring the effectiveness of onboarding. New hires are not going to tell you as often as you would think that they had a bad experience. They're still new with the organization. They're still learning, and they may not even know how to compare that. And then referral opportunities missed, not having the ability to really drive into what a good referral looks like from a great new hire. So our AI now is determining the new hire ramp up times and the quality of your hire, tracking your new hire all the way through that first 30, 60, 90 days. Are they being successful? Are they meeting their metrics? Are they fully ramped up? Here's the DISC personality profile you were referencing, Christine. Informed team assimilation tools. So in the DISC personality is going to ensure your new team member is partnered with others that are like-minded, that they are going to fit into a team and fit a hole you currently have. It also allows you to really manage your team well, especially in the first few months of employment where you're learning them and they're learning you. If you haven't looked at the DISC personality, I highly recommend it. Let's talk about it. Automating the reference at check process. I think most of us are doing this. And I think there are still a lot of holes, even with AI, in the reference check process. Jessica, how many times have we gotten fake references? And now the AI will actually flag it out for us. It will say, these 4 references were all completed from the same IP address. And then I'm like, do I really want to move forward with a candidate who lied about their references? Let's talk to the candidate about it. And then predict the likelihood of the new hire retention. All of us struggle with retention one way or another. In the high volume space, in the niche space, it's so important we understand and we can be able to predict if this person is going to stay in the role. If I have to fill a class of 30 people every month and I know I'm going to lose 10%, I can predict how many I need to overfill in my next class to keep myself at headcount. Stay on top of it so that you can continue to focus on what matters. How we're seeing our AI agents play into this. They're really orchestrating the full onboarding journey by automating it. Partnering your new hire with an AI agent and they're checking in every step of the process without you having to think about it, but you're getting an amazing result. Predicting the risk of whether or not you're going to lose somebody in your first 90 days. Knowing that is going to allow you to stay ahead of the game. And then trigger check-ins and referral automation. The AI agent being partnered with a new hire throughout the first 90 days is also going to allow you to keep a constant check-in. Your new hire is more likely to be honest with AI than they are with you. And, being able to automatically know if they've got some great referrals for you as you move forward.
Thanks, Lindsay, for walking us through the recruiting continuum. It's quite eye-opening when you go through each stage, and there's so much going on in the recruiting cycle. And actually where AI can fit in best is going to vary based upon each organization and even each type of position that you're looking at. So thank you for walking us through. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is before you're deciding which ones to use is really understanding if your team is ready for this. Because I think just as making sure your process is squared away, your team's important as well. And this includes your AI readiness score. So making sure your process is where it should be, is everything defined and documented, making sure the data that you have is clean and ready to use, and the team capability. So does your current team in the seat have the skills to use AI? Do they want to use AI? Are they going to be resistant to the change? And then making sure it fits your tech stack current day. So looking at the current tools that you're using, where you want to implement AI in the process, and will it work with your current tools and compliance, making sure that you know where you need to be with AI regulations. So where do you think your team lands? This is a good exercise for you to go back to after today. We do have a talent assessment and a recruiter talent assessment on our website. We'll send links to that after today's webinar. But you can grade yourself on each step of the recruiting continuum and also look at your current recruiting talent in the seat. Based on those gradings, you can come back and say, am I a level 1? So you're not quite ready yet to implement AI anywhere. Your process is still a little messy. The data probably isn't the best. So you'll need to work on those process improvements and data fixes first. Or are you a level 2? You're getting ready. You have some of these things documented in your process, but you still need a bit more structure before you move forward with any AI tools. And level 3 is AI assisted. So you know your processes are solid. You are ready for a targeted AI tool in a specific stage. Remember, we said start small. Don't try to bite off too much at once. That'll be a huge headache for you. Start in one area, whether that's define and attract, and you want to work on job descriptions. That's a good thing to test it out. And then level 4 is AI integrated. That's when you fully have AI embedded across the recruiting continuum, but you're also able to measure and track what's working. So the people science, we do this often for some of our clients. We do a technology assessment. It includes a tech stack audit. So we look at what you're currently using for each stage of the recruiting continuum. We will create an AI readiness score. So those 5 phases or dimensions that we just looked at, scoring you on those pieces, and also giving a vendor evaluation. So today's webinar was very vendor agnostic. We didn't name any specific names or softwares, but we can do this for you to make sure it matches your hiring model. Again, each tool isn't going to work for each type of position or each organization. And then a future state roadmap. This is important to have for yourself if you're planning to implement AI or any other tech tools, having a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and then a year evaluation to make sure that things are working. Remember, AI and softwares change so quickly. Something that you buy today may be very different and not work for you 3 months from now. We always encourage our clients, if you are going to try out a new tool, do a 30-day trial period. See if you can get a shorter contract. Just kind of have those safeguards up for yourself because things are changing so quickly. And AI gets smarter every time you use it, but only if your process is built to capture the data correctly. So being able to execute across all the stages of the recruiting continuum, and then make sure you're capturing data at every stage consistently so you can go back and measure and look at your ROI on these tools and analyze. So look for patterns, gaps, and wins. Really, I think sometimes people get confused because they focus on ROI. They focus more on activity metrics when you should really be looking at the outcomes there. Outcomes related to efficiency, quality, and experience. If you have more questions about this too, you can always reach out to me or Lindsay. We're happy to dive a little deeper. And then always continuing to optimize. So improving the process, tools, and decisions. Having a dedicated team in your group looking at new tools and AI that's coming out. We also share that information on these webinars as well. So continue to join and educate yourself. So again, this is why the process has to come first. If you include AI without a feedback loop, you're just probably scaling problems or just adding noise to your recruitment cycle. So when you get this right, there is, of course, business impact for you. You'll see faster hiring, of course, shorter time to fill with those efficiencies, a better quality of hire. So being able to use the data to create data-driven decisions in the AI gets rid of that gut feel that people sometimes make when they're going to the offer piece. And in the end, as Lindsay mentioned, being able to look back, track performance, retention, who's likely to stay, you have a better prediction of candidates that will perform. And improving the candidate experience. So like those chatbots, the instant responses, constant communication. Candidates want to know what's going on and not feel like they're in a black hole. Reducing your recruiter workload. So AI, the value I found it is, of course, taking away that repetitive work. I think you're going to see as we're bringing more AI into the play for TA, recruiters' roles are going to evolve, becoming more of a talent advisor instead of someone that just does more manual tasks. And your lower cost per hire. So, with all these tools that are coming in, knowing what are your best sources, the real-time pivots and changes, I think are super valuable. That'll give you better budgets on spending and advertising and ultimately bringing you a lower cost per hire. And measurable ROI on tech. So having a process-first approach means that every tool that you're tying into the process, you'll be focused on the outcomes that you can actually track and build a better recruitment strategy. So for the next 5 days, here's your homework. Look at your biggest process gap in the recruiting cycle, those 8 stages that we went through in the continuum. Map out where you want to fix it. Pull your data. So do you know what your current time to fill and cost per hire is? If you don't have that, that's probably where you should start from the beginning. That can help you track where AI might assist you in your process. Audit your tech stack if you haven't done that already. Understand all the tools that people are using and how frequently they're being used. Some tools you have in place you think are being used, they may not. And get feedback from why they're not being used. And pick one stage to fix first. So like I said, don't try to take a huge small bite, just take a little nibble in the beginning to get started. And share what you've learned today. So this is a good conversation starter. Take it back to your team or key stakeholders. One insight from today's session that you learned. Speaking about it, talking about it more will just cement it for you. And ultimately, the question here isn't whether recruiting will change. It's whether you change fast enough to stay relevant in talent acquisition. I think that's the big challenge for us today. There's so much more to cover in this topic. It's hard to do it all in an hour. Lindsay and myself work with our clients every day, whether it's on our recruiting RPO projects or RPP, recruitment process partnering, staff augmentation. We also do talent acquisition advisory consulting services. And then we have HireGate, which is our software that augments any applicant tracking system that brings in a lot of great reporting. So if there's any questions, any challenges that you're facing, Lindsay and I would love to talk to you. You can always reach out to us through the website or through email. We will send out an email after today's webinar with a copy of the recording, a copy of the deck, and our contact information. And we look forward to having you joining us on our next webinar. Lindsay and Christine, anything you'd like to mention before we sign off?
Lynn?
I think one of the biggest takeaways from today should be it's okay to not know what your starting point is, but finding that first will help you build your roadmap.
If you don't know and you want to get deeper involved, call us. This is all I do all day, by the way. I spent a lot of time on this. Next month, actually, this Sunday, we're announcing our point of view as far as talent acquisition and AI is concerned. It's a big topic. We're calling it Miss or Morph. We'll be doing that program next month. Join us. I think the people that are on this call now that are paying attention to AI, that is everything. And I've got to tell you, everything that you've seen here today has changed in the last 3 weeks. Like that's how quickly AI is changing. And in TA, this is a huge opportunity for us to take the helm of how work is changing based on AI. I'm so excited about this topic more for Miss. I think we've done a great job of taking a deep dive of projecting where is talent, where is your job going? What is your job going to look like? Because AI is not stopping. It's getting bigger. It's getting better. It's getting faster. And most of what we do today is going to be replaced. So I didn't mean to scare you, but we've got to get our arms around this now, learn what's in play now, because the next few years are going to be very, very different than they've ever been. I look forward to seeing everybody next month. If you're going to join us in LA this week, I'll be there for a few days. Lindsay and Jess will be there for the full week. Always appreciate all of our attendees, and thank you for sticking with us, even though we were MIA for a few months. I promise we're back to a monthly schedule, at least unless another AI development comes up that kind of knocks our socks off. Right? Anything else, team?
No, thank you,
Have a
everyone that
terrific day.
attended.
We'll
Thank
see
you,
everybody next
everyone.
month. Thank you. Bye now.